She fired him without blinking an eye, destroyed his livelihood with a single phone call, and called him nobody with dirty hands. But now, with 28 days to find a husband or lose everything, Nora Vance stands trembling at his workshop door, begging the same man she tried to ruin to save her from financial destruction. What she doesn't know is that Marcus Reed has been waiting 2 years for this moment, and the marriage contract she's offering comes with conditions that will either melt her frozen heart or expose her as the race's heiress everyone believes her to be. But when her ex-fiancé discovers her shameful journals filled with hateful words about the man she's now calling husband, will Marcus walk away forever? Or will he teach her that sometimes the greatest love stories begin with the deepest betrayals? The transformation that follows will shock you. The romance will make you believe in second chances, and the ending will prove that love truly can conquer the coldest heart. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're from, because this love story is about to change everything you think you know about redemption and true love. Nora Vance sat behind her massive oak desk, her back straight as a ruler. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of her study, casting long shadows across the Persian rug. She looked at the man standing in front of her, James, one of the gardeners who had worked for her family for 3 years. "I'm sorry, Miss Vance," James stammered, his hat twisted in his hands. "I didn't mean to damage the roses, the new fertilizer." "Stop." Nora's voice cut through his explanation like ice. "I don't want excuses. You ruined my prize-winning roses. Pack your things." James's face fell. "But Miss Vance, I have 2 kids to feed. Please, just give me another chance." "Security will escort you out." Nora pressed a button on her desk without looking up from her papers. "Your final check will be mailed." As James left with slumped shoulders, Nora felt nothing. She had learned long ago that feelings were a weakness. Her father had taught her that. "Business is business, Nora," he used to say. "Soft hearts make for empty pockets." An hour later, her assistant knocked on the door. "Miss Vance, Mr. Henderson is here to see you." Nora looked up as the elderly lawyer walked in. Mr. Henderson had been her family's lawyer for over 30 years. His usually kind face looked serious today. "Good morning, Nora." He sat down across from her desk, placing a thick folder on the polished wood. "I'm afraid we need to discuss your father's will." "We settled that 2 years ago when he died." Nora frowned. "What's this about?" Mr. Henderson opened the folder with careful hands. "There's a clause we haven't discussed yet. Your father called it his stability clause. He was very specific about when I should reveal it to you." A cold feeling settled in Nora's stomach. "What kind of clause?" "According to your father's wishes, you must be married within 30 days of your 29th birthday to a man of unimpeachable moral character, or the estate transfers to your cousin Edward." The words hit Nora like a slap. "That's impossible! I turn 29 next month!" "I know." Mr. Henderson's voice was gentle but firm. "Your father was concerned about your isolation. He believed marriage would help you find happiness." Nora stood up so fast her chair rolled backward. "Happiness? This is about money, not happiness. Edward is a gambling addict who would sell this place in a heartbeat." "Your father knew that. He also knew Edward would destroy everything your family built." Mr. Henderson pulled out another paper. "The man you marry must be thoroughly investigated by a private detective. No criminal record, strong community ties, and proven moral character." Nora walked to the window and stared out at the vast gardens of her estate. The Vance mansion had been in her family for 4 generations. 20 rooms, 10 bathrooms, and 40 acres of prime land. It was all she had left of her family. "How long do I have?" 28 days. That evening, Nora wandered through her empty mansion. Her heels clicked on the marble floors, echoing in the silence. She passed room after room, the formal dining room where she ate alone every night, the library where she read by herself, the sitting room where no one ever sat. She stopped in front of her father's portrait in the main hall. Richard Vance stared down at her with cold blue eyes, the same eyes she saw in the mirror every morning. "You planned this, didn't you?" she whispered to the painting. "You knew I'd have no friends to turn to." Her phone buzzed. A text from Silas Thorne, her ex-fiancé from 2 years ago. Heard you might need company. Coffee tomorrow? Nora's heart jumped with hope. Maybe Silas had changed. Maybe he actually missed her. They met at the country club the next morning. Silas looked as handsome as ever in his expensive suit, his blonde hair perfectly styled. He smiled his charming smile as he kissed her cheek. Nora, darling, you look wonderful. He held her chair as she sat down. I've missed you. For a moment, Nora let herself believe it was true. I've missed you too, Silas. They talked about old times over coffee and croissants. Silas was funny and charming, just like when they first met. But as the conversation went on, something felt wrong. So, Silas leaned forward. I heard about your father's little marriage requirement. Nora's blood went cold. How did you? Word travels fast in our circle. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Look, I'll be honest. I need money for a new business venture. You need a husband. We could help each other. Help each other how? Marry me again. I know we didn't work out before, but this is different. Business. He reached across the table and touched her hand. We could sell this place and split the money. Think about it. Freedom from that old house. Money to travel the world. Nora pulled her hand away. Sell my family's home? It's just a house, Nora. A very expensive house that costs a fortune to maintain. Silas's mask was slipping. We could be rich and free. Nora stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. Get out. Nora, be reasonable. I said get out! Her voice carried across the quiet restaurant. Other diners turned to stare. Silas's face turned red. You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back when you realize no one else will have you. That night, Nora sat in her kitchen, something she rarely did. The staff had gone home hours ago. She made herself a simple sandwich and ate it standing by the window. The kitchen was warm and cozy compared to the formal dining room. She heard soft crying from the pantry. Martha Reed, her housekeeper, sat on a small stool with her head in her hands. Martha had worked for the Vance family for 15 years. She was more like family than an employee. Martha? Nora approached carefully. What's wrong? Martha looked up with tear-filled eyes. Oh, Miss Nora, I didn't know you were down here. Please, tell me what's happening. Martha wiped her eyes with a tissue. It's my nephew Marcus. He's trying to help me with some medical bills from when I had surgery last year. The bank wants to take my little house. Her voice broke. He's working 3 jobs, but it's not enough. Nora's heart clenched. She had been so focused on her own problems that she hadn't noticed Martha's pain. How much do you owe? $25,000. Martha shook her head. Might as well be $1 million. $25,000. Nora spent more than that on shoes every year. But for Martha, it was everything. Let me help. No, Miss Nora, I can't take your money. Marcus would be ashamed if he knew I told you. Martha stood up, trying to regain her composure. He's a proud man, good man, works with stone and wood, builds beautiful things with his hands. A memory flickered in Nora's mind. Marcus Reed. She had met him 2 years ago when he was working on a stone wall for her neighbor. She had complained to the city about his workshop, saying it ruined her view. The man had been polite but firm when she confronted him about it. He wouldn't take charity, Martha continued. Says a man should stand on his own 2 feet. After Martha went home, Nora paced her study until midnight. A plan began forming in her mind. It was crazy, desperate, and probably wouldn't work, but it was the only idea she had. The next morning, she drove her BMW to the construction site outside town. Workers in hard hats moved around like busy ants. She asked for Marcus Reed and was directed to a man working alone on a stone foundation. Marcus looked up as her shadow fell across his work. He was tall and strong, with dark skin that gleamed with sweat. His hands were steady as he placed each stone with perfect precision. When he saw her, his brown eyes were cautious but polite. Miss Vance. He set down his tools and stood up. What can I do for you? Nora's carefully planned speech stuck in her throat. Up close, Marcus was more handsome than she remembered. There was a quiet strength about him that made her feel small and foolish. I have a proposition for you. Marcus raised an eyebrow but said nothing. I need to get married. The words tumbled out quickly. Not for love, for business, legal reasons. I would pay you well for 1 year of marriage, enough to save your aunt's house and much more. Marcus stared at her for a long moment. Then he picked up his tools and went back to work. Did you hear me? Nora stepped closer. I'm offering you more money than you could make in 10 years. Marcus carefully placed another stone before looking up at her again. I heard you. And? Lady, I wouldn't marry you for all the gold in the world. The words hit Nora like a physical blow. She had expected him to negotiate, maybe ask for more money. She hadn't expected a flat refusal. Why not? It's just a business arrangement. 1 year. Marcus stood up again, his full height making her feel tiny. Because marriage isn't business, and because you're the kind of person who fires good men for honest mistakes. Nora's face burned with shame. News traveled fast in a small town. That's not... I know exactly who you are, Miss Vance. Marcus's voice was quiet but firm. You tried to shut down my workshop because you didn't like looking at where poor folks work. You think money can buy anything, including people. He turned back to his stones, dismissing her completely. Nora walked back to her car on shaking legs. She had never been rejected so completely in her life. But what stung more than the rejection was the truth in his words. She was exactly the kind of person he described. That night, Martha called in a panic. She had collapsed at home from stress and was in the hospital. Nora drove there immediately, her heart pounding with fear. She found Martha in the emergency room, looking small and fragile in the hospital bed. Where's Marcus? Nora asked the nurse. He's in the waiting room. He's been here for hours. Nora found Marcus sitting alone in the cold, fluorescent-lit waiting room. He looked up when she approached, surprise flickering in his eyes. How is she? Nora asked. Stable. The doctor says it's stress and exhaustion. Marcus's voice was tired. She's been working too hard, worrying too much. Nora sat down in the chair next to him. They sat in silence for a while, the only sounds coming from the vending machines and distant hospital noises. She's been like a mother to me, Marcus said suddenly. Raised me after my parents died in a car accident, worked 3 jobs to keep me in school. I didn't know. Nora's voice was barely a whisper. Course you didn't. Rich folks don't usually know about people like us. But there was no anger in his voice, just sadness. They sat together through the long night. Around 3 a.m, when the hospital was quiet and still, Marcus looked at her with those deep brown eyes. Why do you really need to get married? Nora told him everything. About her father's claws, about Edward, about losing the only home she had ever known. She found herself talking about things she had never told anyone. How lonely she was, how scared she felt, how empty her life had become. Marcus listened without judgment, occasionally nodding or asking a quiet question. When she finished, dawn was breaking through the waiting room windows. Martha was sleeping peacefully in her room, and the crisis had passed. Your offer, Marcus said slowly. It would have to be a real marriage. I won't hide in the shadows like your dirty secret. Nora's heart jumped. You'll do it? I'll think about it. Marcus stood up and stretched his tired muscles. But if I agree, we do this my way. I live in that big house with you. I eat at your table. I go where you go. People will know you're married to a working man, and you'll have to live with whatever they say about that. He walked toward Martha's room, then turned back. And one more thing. This may start as business, but I won't live a lie. If we're going to be married, we're going to try to make it real. I don't know if that's something you can handle. As he disappeared down the hallway, Nora sat alone in the waiting room, watching the sun rise through the window. For the first time in years, she felt something other than cold emptiness in her chest. It might have been hope. 3 days later, Nora stood in the courthouse wearing her best navy suit. The building smelled like old paper and floor wax. Marcus arrived exactly on time, dressed in clean dark jeans and a white button-down shirt that made his skin glow. He had shaved and trimmed his hair, but he still looked like what he was, a working man in an unfamiliar place. The ceremony took 5 minutes. Judge Williams, a tired-looking woman in her 60s, read the legal words in a bored voice. There were no flowers, no music, no family. Just two strangers promising to love and honor each other for reasons that had nothing to do with love. Do you, Marcus Reed, take Nora Vance to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Marcus's voice was steady and sure. Do you, Nora Vance, take Marcus Reed to be your lawfully wedded husband? Nora's throat felt dry. I do. You may kiss the bride. Marcus turned to her with gentle eyes. Instead of kissing her lips, he leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to her cheek. His lips were warm against her skin, and she caught the scent of soap and something else, something clean and masculine that made her heart race. The kiss lasted only a second, but Nora felt it all the way to her toes. Congratulations, Judge Williams said, already reaching for the next file on her desk. They signed the papers in silence. When it was done, Nora looked down at the gold band on her finger, a simple ring. Marcus had bought with his own money. She had offered to buy expensive wedding rings, but he refused. A ring should mean something, he had said, not show off how much money you have. The drive back to the mansion was quiet. Nora glanced at Marcus as he looked out the window at the passing trees. What was he thinking? Was he already regretting this crazy arrangement? You can change your mind, she said suddenly. We could get it annulled tomorrow if you want. Marcus looked at her with those deep brown eyes. Is that what you want? No. The word came out before she could stop it. I mean, we have an agreement. Right, an agreement. Something flickered across his face, but she couldn't read it. When they reached the mansion, Marcus got his single trunk from his pickup truck. Everything he owned fit in one old wooden box. Nora watched him carry it up the front steps, suddenly ashamed of her 20 rooms of expensive things. The master bedroom is upstairs, she said awkwardly. But you can use any guest room you like. Marcus set his trunk down in the marble foyer. Which room is closest to yours? The question caught her off guard. Why? Because we're married now. Married couples live near each other. He looked around the grand entrance hall. Unless you want people to think this is fake. The blue room is next to mine. Nora's voice came out smaller than she intended. Marcus nodded and picked up his trunk. That'll work. As he climbed the curved staircase, Nora tried not to stare at the way his shoulders moved under his shirt. This was business, she reminded herself. Nothing more. But when he reached the top of the stairs and looked back at her, something warm and dangerous fluttered in her chest. The next morning, Nora woke to the sound of hammering. She put on her silk robe and followed the noise downstairs. Marcus was in the front hall, fixing the broken banister that had been loose for months. What are you doing? She asked. Fixing what's broken. He didn't look up from his work. Can't have guests falling down your stairs. The repair service can handle that. Marcus finally looked at her, taking in her expensive robe and perfectly styled hair. When? You've been ignoring this banister for how long? Nora felt heat creep up her neck. I've been busy. Right. Marcus went back to his work. Well, I'm not busy today. Nora wanted to argue, but the truth was she had been ignoring the broken banister for over a year. She kept meaning to call someone, but it was easier to just avoid that part of the staircase. She made coffee in the kitchen, something she rarely did, and brought Marcus a cup. He looked surprised, but grateful. Thank you. He took a sip and smiled. Good coffee. Martha taught me. Nora found herself smiling back. She says I make it too weak, but you're being nice. I'm not being nice. I'm being honest. Marcus set down the cup and tested the banister. It was solid now, safe. Martha's right, though. You could. Make it stronger. They stood there for a moment, not sure what to say next. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows, and for the first time in years, the mansion didn't feel completely empty. The phone rang, breaking the spell. Nora answered to find Mr. Henderson on the other end. "Good morning, Nora. I need to stop by today to verify your marriage for the legal paperwork." Of course. Nora glanced at Marcus. "What time?" 2:00. And Nora, appearances matter. Make sure everything looks authentic. After she hung up, Marcus was watching her with raised eyebrows. "Let me guess. We need to look like a real married couple." "Something like that." Nora twisted her wedding ring nervously. "Will you? Can you act like we're actually married?" Marcus leaned against the newly fixed banister. "What does that look like to you?" The question was harder than it should have been. Nora had never seen a real marriage up close. Her parents had lived separate lives in the same house. She had no idea what normal couples did. "I don't know," she admitted. Something soft crossed Marcus's face. "We'll figure it out." At exactly 2:00, Mr. Henderson arrived with his briefcase and serious expression. Nora and Marcus met him in the living room, sitting close enough on the couch to look comfortable, but not close enough to touch. Henderson asked routine questions about their relationship, taking notes on his legal pad. Where did they meet? How long had they known each other? When did they decide to marry? Marcus answered with calm honesty, making their arrangement sound like a natural romance. He was good at this, Nora realized, much better than she was. "And where will you both be living?" Henderson asked. "Here," Marcus said simply. "This is our home now." Henderson made another note. "I see you've already made some improvements." He gestured toward the fixed banister. "A man takes care of his home," Marcus replied. Something in his voice made Nora look at him. The way he said his home didn't sound possessive or greedy. It sounded protective. After Henderson left, they sat in awkward silence. "Thank you," Nora said finally. "You made that look easy." "It wasn't hard." Marcus stood up and straightened his shirt. "Most of what I said was true anyway." Before Nora could ask what he meant, her phone rang. She saw Silas's name on the screen and her stomach dropped. "Hello, Silas." "Nora, darling." His voice was too sweet, like spoiled honey. "I heard the most interesting news. You got married? And didn't invite your oldest friends?" Nora's hands began to shake. It was a small ceremony. To a construction worker, Silas's voice turned sharp. "Really, Nora, even for you, this is desperate." Marcus was watching her face, seeing the fear there. Without a word, he walked over and gently took the phone from her hands. "This is Marcus Reed, Nora's husband." His voice was polite but firm. "Who am I speaking with?" Nora could hear Silas sputtering through the phone. "I'm an old friend of Nora's," Silas finally said. "I'm sure she's told you about me." "She's mentioned you." Marcus's tone could have frozen water. "But I'm afraid we don't take calls from people who upset my wife. Have a good day." He hung up before Silas could respond. Nora stared at him in shock. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." Marcus handed her back the phone. "Nobody talks to you that way, not while I'm around." The fierce protectiveness in his voice made something warm bloom in Nora's chest. When had anyone ever stood up for her like that? "He'll cause trouble," she warned. "Silas doesn't like being dismissed." "Let him try." Marcus's jaw was set. "I'm not afraid of men like him." That evening, they received an invitation to the annual Charity Foundation Gala, the biggest social event of the year. Everyone who was anyone in their small town would be there. Nora stared at the gold-embossed invitation with dread. "We have to go." "Okay." Marcus was reading over her shoulder. "Sounds fancy." "Very fancy." Nora turned to look at him. "Are you sure you want to do this? These people, they'll stare, they'll whisper." Marcus met her eyes steadily. "Will you be ashamed to be seen with me?" The question hit her like a slap. "No, that's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Nora struggled to find the right words. "I meant they'll be cruel. To both of us, and especially to you." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I've dealt with cruel people before. The question is whether you're ready to stand with me when they are. The next day, Nora offered to buy Marcus a tuxedo for the gala. He refused, insisting on renting one with his own money. They went to the formal wear shop together, and Nora tried not to notice how the saleswoman's eyes widened when she saw them together. While Marcus tried on suits, Nora waited in a chair nearby. She overheard two elderly women talking behind a rack of dresses. "Did you see? Nora Vance married that construction worker. Desperate times, I suppose. Her father must be rolling in his grave. Well, at least she'll have strong arms to comfort her when she loses everything." Their laughter felt like nails on a chalkboard. Nora wanted to stand up and defend Marcus, but the words stuck in her throat. These were her people, her social circle. She had spent her whole life caring what they thought. When Marcus came out of the dressing room in his rented tuxedo, Nora forgot how to breathe. He looked magnificent. The black jacket fit his broad shoulders perfectly, and the crisp white shirt made his dark skin glow. He looked like he belonged on the cover of a magazine. "How do I look?" he asked, adjusting his bow tie. "Perfect." The word slipped out before she could stop it. Marcus smiled, and the warmth of it made her heart skip. "Thank you." As they left the shop, Nora's phone buzzed with a text from Silas. "Looking forward to seeing you and your new husband at the gala. Should be entertaining." A cold dread settled in her stomach. Silas was planning something. She just didn't know what. That night, as she lay in her big, empty bed, Nora could hear Marcus moving around in the room next to hers. The sound should have been annoying, but instead, it was comforting. For the first time in years, she wasn't completely alone in the mansion. She thought about the way he had stood up to Silas on the phone, the way he had fixed her banister without being asked, the way he looked at her like she was worth protecting. This was supposed to be just business, a simple arrangement to save her inheritance. But lying in the dark, listening to her husband's quiet movements through the wall, Nora was beginning to realize that nothing about Marcus Reed was simple. And despite every warning in her head, she was starting to hope it might become something more. The evening of the gala arrived gray and drizzly. Nora spent an hour getting ready, choosing a simple black dress that was elegant but not flashy. She wanted to look good, but she didn't want to overshadow Marcus. When she came downstairs, Marcus was waiting in the foyer. The sight of him in his tuxedo still took her breath away. He had trimmed his beard and his hair was perfectly styled. He looked like he belonged in her world, even though she knew he would never want to. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you." Nora felt her cheeks warm. "You clean up pretty well yourself." Marcus offered her his arm and she took it. His muscles were solid under the fine fabric of his jacket. As they walked to the car, she caught his scent again, that clean, masculine smell that made her feel safe. The country club was decorated with white flowers and golden lights. Expensive cars filled the parking lot. Through the windows, Nora could see the crowd of people she had known her whole life: lawyers, doctors, business owners, old families with old money. "Ready?" Marcus asked as they approached the entrance. Nora's stomach was full of butterflies. "As ready as I'll ever be." The moment they walked through the doors, conversations stopped. Heads turned. Eyes stared. Nora felt the weight of every gaze, every whisper, every raised eyebrow. Marcus walked beside her with calm confidence, nodding politely to people they passed. If he felt the stares, he didn't show it. "Nora!" Mrs. Wellington, the mayor's wife, approached with a bright fake smile. "How wonderful to see you! And this must be your husband." The pause before the word husband was deliberate and cutting. "Marcus Reed." Marcus extended his hand with a warm smile. "Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Wellington." Mrs. Wellington shook his hand briefly, like she might catch something from touching him. "How interesting. And what is it you do, Marcus?" "I work with stone and wood. Build things that last." "How rustic." Mrs. Wellington's smile could have cut glass. "Well, I hope you enjoy the evening." She walked away quickly, already whispering to her friends. Rustic? Marcus asked with amusement. Don't listen to her. Nora felt anger rising in her chest. She's a bitter old woman who's never worked a day in her life. Marcus looked surprised. You're defending me? Before Nora could answer, a familiar voice cut through the crowd. Well, well, if it isn't the happy couple. Silas appeared beside them, drink in hand and malice in his eyes. He was dressed in an expensive tuxedo that probably cost more than Marcus made in a month. Silas. Nora's voice was ice cold. Nora, darling, you look lovely. Silas's eyes moved to Marcus with obvious disdain. And Marcus, isn't it? The handyman. Construction and masonry, Marcus corrected politely, among other things. How humble. Silas took a sip of his drink. Tell me, Marcus, what's it like living in a house you could never afford? Must be quite the adjustment from whatever trailer park you came from. The insult hung in the air like poison. Nora felt her face burn with shame and anger. Around them, people had stopped talking to listen. Marcus was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm and measured. You're right, Silas. I couldn't afford that house. Just like you can't afford good manners, apparently. Marcus smiled pleasantly. But the difference is, manners don't cost anything. You just have to care about other people more than yourself. Several people nearby chuckled. Silas's face turned red. Listen here, you! Gentlemen! Dr. Harrison, the club president, appeared beside them. Perhaps we could keep our voices down. This is a charity event after all. Silas forced a smile. Of course, just getting to know Nora's new husband. Marcus nodded to Dr. Harrison. Doctor, I believe my Aunt Martha has spoken of you. She said you took excellent care of her during her surgery last year. Dr. Harrison's entire demeanor changed. Martha Reed is your aunt? She's a wonderful woman, one of the kindest patients I've ever treated. She raised me after my parents died, taught me everything I know about treating people right. Then she did an excellent job. Dr. Harrison shook Marcus's hand warmly. Any nephew of Martha's is welcome here. As Dr. Harrison walked away, Silas looked like he had swallowed something sour. He had expected Marcus to be embarrassed or angry. Instead, Marcus had turned the situation around with grace and dignity. Excuse me, Silas muttered, and disappeared into the crowd. Nora stared at Marcus in amazement. How did you do that? Do what? Turn him into the fool instead of letting him make you look foolish. Marcus adjusted his bow tie. My aunt taught me that the best way to deal with bullies is to stay calm and let them show their true colors. Works every time. They moved through the party, and Nora watched Marcus charm person after person. He wasn't trying to impress anyone or prove anything. He was just being himself, kind, honest, and genuinely interested in other people. When they sat down for dinner, Marcus held her chair for her. When the salad was served, he waited for her to start eating before he touched his fork. When Mrs. Patterson asked him about his work, he talked about it with quiet pride, but didn't brag. I love working with stone, he told the table. Every piece is different. You have to listen to what the stone wants to be, not force it into something it's not. How poetic, said Judge Morrison. I never thought about construction that way. It's not just construction. It's creating something that will still be standing long after we're gone. Marcus cut his meat carefully. There's something beautiful about that kind of permanence. Nora found herself hanging on every word. She had never heard anyone talk about work the way Marcus did, with love and respect and purpose. After dinner, the band started playing soft jazz. Couples moved onto the dance floor. Nora watched them, remembering the last time she had danced. It was with Silas, 2 years ago, and even then it had felt empty. Would you like to dance? Marcus asked quietly. Nora's heart jumped. Yes. Marcus led her onto the dance floor and pulled her gently into his arms. He was a good dancer, not fancy, but steady and sure. One hand rested on her lower back, warm through the silk of her dress. The other held her hand carefully, like she was made of something precious. They swayed to the music, and Nora felt the rest of the world fade away. This close, she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. She could feel the heat of his body through his jacket. "You're a good dancer," she whispered. "My aunt made me take lessons when I was 16. Said every gentleman should know how to dance." "Smart woman." "The smartest." Marcus spun her gently, then pulled her back. "She knew I'd need to know how to treat a lady properly someday." The song was ending. Marcus dipped her slightly, and for a moment they were frozen there, his face inches from hers. Nora's lips parted slightly. She could feel his breath on her skin. Then the music stopped and the spell was broken. Marcus helped her stand straight, but his hands lingered on her waist for just a moment longer than necessary. They were walking back to their table when Silas appeared again, clearly drunk now and angrier than before.
"Touching display,"
he said loudly.
"But we all know what this really is, don't we?"
"Silas, don't." Nora's voice was a warning.
"A business arrangement, pure and simple."
Silas's voice carried across the quiet room.
"Poor little rich girl needs a husband, any husband, to keep her inheritance, even a nobody like him."
People were staring now, whispers spreading like wildfire. Nora felt the walls of her perfect evening crashing down around her, but Marcus just smiled sadly.
"You're right about one thing, Silas. It did start as business."
Nora's heart sank. He was going to admit it, here in front of everyone.
"But you know what I learned?"
Marcus continued, his voice carrying clearly through the room. "Sometimes the best things in life start for the wrong reasons and become something beautiful. Sometimes you think you're just helping someone out, and you end up finding exactly what you were looking for." He turned to look at Nora, and his eyes were full of something that made her knees weak. "I married Nora because she needed help, but I'm staying married to her because I can't imagine my life without her in it." The room was dead silent. Nora felt tears sting her eyes. Marcus looked back at Silas. "That's something you'll never understand, because you've never loved anyone more than yourself." Without another word, Marcus took Nora's hand and led her toward the exit. Behind them, the room erupted in whispers and murmurs. In the car, Nora sat quietly as Marcus drove through the rainy night. Finally, she found her voice. "Did you mean what you said back there?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Which part?" "About staying married to me because you can't imagine your life without me." Marcus pulled into the mansion's driveway and turned off the engine. Rain drummed softly on the roof of the car. "Nora, I want to tell you something." His voice was gentle but serious. "I know this started as a business deal. I know you needed a husband and I needed the money to help Martha. But somewhere along the way, it became real for me." Nora's heart was pounding. "Real how?" "Real like I look forward to seeing you every morning. Real like I want to protect you from people who hurt you. Real like when you smile at me, it's the best part of my day." Tears were flowing freely down Nora's face now. "Marcus, I'm not asking you to feel the same way. I know we come from different worlds. I just wanted you to know that for me, this isn't pretend anymore." Before she could lose her nerve, Nora leaned across the car and kissed him. Really kissed him, soft and sweet and full of all the feelings she had been trying to ignore. Marcus kissed her back, his hand coming up to cup her face gently. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "That felt pretty real to me too," Nora whispered. Marcus smiled, the first truly happy smile she had ever seen from him. "Good, because I was starting to think I was crazy." They sat in the car for a few more minutes, holding hands and listening to the rain. For the first time in her life, Nora felt like she was exactly where she belonged. But as they walked up to the dark mansion together, neither of them saw the figure watching from the bushes. Silas had followed them home, and the look on his face promised trouble ahead. Inside her study, hidden in the back of her desk drawer, Nora's old journals waited to reveal secrets that could destroy everything they were building together. The next morning dawned bright and clear, as if the storm had washed the world clean. Nora woke with a smile on her face for the first time in years. She could hear Marcus moving around in the kitchen, probably making breakfast. She put on a simple sundress instead of her usual business suit and went downstairs. Marcus was at the stove, scrambling eggs and humming quietly. He had changed into jeans and a work shirt, but he was still the most handsome man she had ever seen. "Good morning," she said softly. Marcus turned and smiled at her.
"Morning, beautiful. Sleep well?"
The casual endearment made her heart flutter. "Better than I have in months." They ate breakfast together at the kitchen table instead of the formal dining room. Marcus told her about his plans for the day. He wanted to fix the leaky roof in the library before the next rain. "You don't have to do that," Nora said. "I can call a repair service."
"I want to."
Marcus reached across the table and took her hand.
"This is our home now. I want to take care of it."
Our home. The words made something warm bloom in Nora's chest. After breakfast, they worked together to move the valuable books out of the library before Marcus started on the roof. It was hard work, but Nora found herself laughing as they struggled with a particularly heavy volume of Shakespeare. "Careful!" Marcus called out as she nearly dropped it. "That book is probably worth more than my truck." "It's just a book," Nora said, then immediately felt guilty. "I mean, it's important, but—"
"But books are meant to be read, not just collected."
Marcus helped her set it safely on a high shelf.
"When's the last time you actually read one of these?"
Nora looked around at the hundreds of leather-bound volumes. I'm not sure."
"That's a shame. All this knowledge just sitting here gathering dust."
They were lifting another box of books when the old ceiling finally gave way. Water and plaster came tumbling down, soaking them both completely. Nora shrieked and jumped into Marcus's arms instinctively. For a moment they stood there, dripping wet and covered in dust, staring at each other. Then Marcus started laughing. It was a deep, rich sound that filled the whole room. "What's so funny?" Nora demanded, but she was starting to smile too. "Look at us. You look like you've been rolling around in a flower factory." Nora looked down at her ruined dress, then up at Marcus. His dark hair was white with plaster dust, and there was a streak of dirt across his cheek. She reached up and wiped it away with her thumb. "You don't look much better." Something shifted in Marcus's eyes. The laughter faded, replaced by something deeper and more intense. Still holding her in his arms, he leaned down slowly. This time when they kissed, it wasn't desperate or uncertain. It was soft and sweet and full of promise. Nora felt like she was melting from the inside out. When they broke apart, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "I could get used to this." "Me too," Nora whispered. They spent the rest of the morning cleaning up the mess and working on the roof. Martha arrived at noon with sandwiches and lemonade, taking one look at their dirty, happy faces and smiling knowingly. "You two look like you've been having fun," she said with a twinkle in her eye. "Just a small disaster in the library," Marcus explained, accepting a sandwich gratefully. "Sometimes the best things come from disasters," Martha said, looking meaningfully at Nora. That afternoon, Marcus asked Nora if she wanted to see where her money had gone. She agreed, curious about what he meant. They drove to a modest neighborhood on the other side of town, where the houses were small but well-maintained. Marcus stopped in front of a tiny blue house with a neat front yard. An elderly woman was sitting on the porch, watching some children play in the street. "Mrs. Johnson," Marcus called out as they got out of the car. "How's that porch working out?" The woman's face lit up when she saw him. "Oh, Marcus, it's wonderful. No more creaking boards. Come see." Marcus led Nora up to the porch, which was clearly new. The wood was fresh and strong, with beautiful carved details on the railings. "This is my wife, Nora," Marcus said proudly. Mrs. Johnson studied Nora with sharp but kind eyes. "So you're the one who helped Marcus fix my porch. Child, you don't know what this means to an old woman. I was scared to sit out here before. thought I might fall through the boards." "Marcus did all the work," Nora said, feeling awkward. "But you made it possible." Mrs. Johnson patted Nora's hand. "That's what good marriages are about, helping each other help others." They visited 3 more houses where Marcus had used Nora's money to help people. A new roof for a single mother with 2 kids, tools for a young man trying to start his own carpentry business, medicine for an elderly man who couldn't afford his prescriptions. "I don't understand," Nora said as they drove home. "You could have kept that money for yourself." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "What good is money if you don't use it to help people?" "Most people would say the good is having security, buying things you want. I already have everything I need." Marcus glanced at her, especially now. That evening, Nora found herself in her father's study, looking through old papers. She wasn't sure what she was looking for until she found them. Her journals from 2 years ago, hidden in the back of a drawer. With shaking hands, she opened the leather-bound book and read her own words. "That awful man Marcus Reed is building some kind of workshop near the property line. The noise is terrible, and the sight of him and his workers ruins my morning view. I've called the city twice to complain. How dare he bring his working-class noise so close to my home? People like that should know their place." Nora's stomach turned as she read more. "Confronted the Reed man today about his workshop. He was polite but arrogant, acting like he has every right to disturb my peace. I've decided to have father's lawyers investigate him. There must be some way to shut him down. I won't have my property values destroyed by some nobody with dirty hands." Page after page of cruel, hateful thoughts, words that made her sound like a monster, words that proved everything Marcus had said about her was true. She was so absorbed in her shameful reading that she didn't hear the footsteps in the hall. She didn't notice the shadow in the doorway until it was too late.
Well, well, what do we have here?
Nora's blood turned to ice. Silas stood in the doorway of the study, holding a crowbar. His face was twisted with rage and alcohol. "How did you get in here?" Nora tried to keep her voice steady.
Broke the lock on the back door. Your husband isn't the only one who knows his way around tools.
Silas stepped into the room, closing the door behind him.
I came to have a little chat about your fake marriage, but this is even better.
He gestured toward the journals in her hands.
Love letters to your husband? Or maybe something more interesting?
"Get out, Silas. I'm calling the police."
I don't think so.
Silas moved closer, and Nora smelled whiskey on his breath. "Not when I finally have what I need to destroy your perfect little love story." Before Nora could react, Silas lunged forward and grabbed the journal from her hands. He flipped it open and began reading aloud in a mocking voice.
That awful man, Marcus Reed. How dare he bring his working-class noise so close to my home? People like that should know their place.
Silas grinned viciously.
Oh, this is perfect. Wait until your husband hears what you really thought of him.
Those were written 2 years ago. I was different then.
Were you? Or are you just a better actress now?
Silas tucked the journal under his arm.
Either way, I think Marcus deserves to know the truth about his loving wife.
What do you want?
Half the money from selling this place, and the nice quiet divorce so you can marry someone more appropriate.
Heavy footsteps sounded in the hallway. Marcus was coming home. "Perfect timing," Silas whispered. The door opened and Marcus walked in, still in his work clothes from fixing the roof. He took one look at Silas and tensed like a coiled spring.
What are you doing in my house?
Your house? Silas laughed. That's rich. Tell me, Marcus, do you know what your wife really thinks of people like you?
Get out, now!
Marcus's voice was deadly calm. Not before I share some light reading. Silas opened the journal again. Let me see. Here's a good one. I won't have my property values destroyed by some nobody with dirty hands. Marcus's eyes found Nora's face. She saw the exact moment when he understood what he was hearing. Please, Nora whispered, let me explain. But Silas wasn't finished.
He read passage after passage, each word cutting deeper than the last. With every hateful sentence, Marcus's face grew more distant and cold. Finally, Silas closed the journal with a satisfied smile. "Well, I think my work here is done. Enjoy your marriage, you two." He tossed the journal at Nora's feet and walked toward the door. But Marcus stepped into his path. "You broke into my home and threatened my wife. I think the police need to hear about that." Silas's confidence wavered. "She's not really your wife. This whole marriage is a fraud. The marriage certificate says otherwise." Marcus pulled out his phone. "And breaking and entering is a real crime, no matter what you think about our relationship." Within minutes, police sirens wailed outside. Silas was arrested and led away in handcuffs, his face purple with rage. After the police left, Marcus and Nora stood alone in the study. The journal lay open on the floor between them like a poisonous snake. "Marcus," Nora began, but he held up his hand. "I need some air." He walked out of the room without looking back. Nora heard the front door close, then the sound of his truck starting. He was leaving. She sank into her father's chair and buried her face in her hands. Everything was ruined. All the trust they had built, all the love that was growing between them, destroyed by her own hateful words. Hours passed. Marcus didn't come back. Nora packed a small bag, leaving behind her designer clothes and expensive jewelry. She couldn't stay in this house, not when every room reminded her of her failure. She drove to a small apartment complex across town and rented a tiny one-bedroom unit. It had cheap furniture and thin walls, but it was honest. It wasn't bought with blood money or family legacy. The next morning, she walked to the public library and asked about volunteer work. The head librarian, Mrs. Chen, looked surprised but pleased. "We could certainly use help with the children's reading program. The pay isn't much." "I don't need pay," Nora said quietly. "I just want to do something useful." For 2 days, Nora threw herself into her work at the library. She read stories to children, organized bookshelves, and helped elderly patrons find what they needed. It was simple work, but it felt more meaningful than anything she had ever done. On the second evening, as she was locking up the library, she found Marcus waiting by her car. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept much, but his eyes weren't cold anymore. They were sad and confused. "I heard you moved out," he said quietly. "I couldn't stay." Nora's voice was barely a whisper. "Not after what you learned about me." "Those journals, they were from 2 years ago." But they were true, every awful word. Tears started flowing down Nora's face. "I was exactly the kind of person you thought I was. Selfish and cruel and you changed." Marcus stepped closer. "People can change, Nora. I've seen it happen." "Have I? Really? Or am I just scared of being poor?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the dim parking lot light. "The woman who wrote those journals wouldn't be working at the library for free. She wouldn't have given up a mansion, too. Live in a tiny apartment. She wouldn't have cared when Martha was in the hospital." "I hurt you. I hurt people like you." "Yes, you did. But the Nora I married, the Nora I fell in love with, she would never hurt anyone if she could help it." Nora looked up at him through her tears. "You fell in love with me?" Marcus smiled sadly. "I tried not to. Told myself it was just business, just helping out a woman in trouble. But somewhere between fixing your banister and dancing with you at that gala, I lost my heart completely." "Even after reading those terrible things?" "Especially after reading them, because they showed me how far you've come, how much you've grown." Marcus reached out and gently wiped away her tears. "The woman who wrote those journals was empty and angry. The woman standing here with me is full of love and trying to make things right." "I don't deserve you." "Maybe not, but I don't deserve you either. That's what makes us perfect for each other." Before Nora could respond, Marcus pulled a small carved stone from his pocket. It was heart-shaped, with a crack down the middle that had been carefully mended with gold. "I made this for you. In Japan, they have a practice called kintsugi, fixing broken things with gold. The idea is that something broken and repaired is more beautiful than something that was never broken at all." Nora took the stone heart with trembling hands. "It's beautiful." "Like you, broken in some places but stronger and more beautiful because of how you've healed. Marcus, I love you. The words came out in a rush. I love your kindness and your strength and the way you see the best in everyone. I love how you make me want to be better than I ever thought I could be. Marcus pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply. This kiss tasted like forgiveness and new beginnings and forever. When they broke apart, both of them were crying. Come home with me, Marcus whispered. Not to the mansion, that's just a house. Come home to me. Where is home? Marcus smiled. Wherever we are together. 3 months later, they stood in Mr. Henderson's office, signing papers for a small cottage on the edge of the old estate. Marcus had used his savings to buy it from Edward, Nora's cousin, who was eager to sell off pieces of the property for quick cash. The cottage was tiny compared to the mansion, just 3 rooms and a little garden, but it was theirs, bought with love and honest work. Are you sure about this? Henderson asked as they signed the final papers. You could contest the will, try to get the mansion back. Nora looked at Marcus, then at their new deed. I'm sure. We don't need 20 rooms to be happy. We just need each other. As they walked out of the lawyer's office, hand in hand, Nora felt lighter than she had in years. She glanced back at the massive Vance mansion in the distance, where Edward was already making plans to tear it down for a shopping center. It should have broken her heart to see her family legacy destroyed. Instead, she felt free. Any regrets? Marcus asked, following her gaze. Just one. Nora squeezed his hand. I regret it took me so long to realize that love is the only inheritance that really matters. Marcus lifted their joined hands and kissed her wedding ring, the simple gold band that meant more than all her father's money. Well then, he said with a grin, we're both very rich people. They walked toward their little cottage as the sun set behind them, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. In the garden, Martha was planting flowers, humming happily as she worked. This was home, not because of the walls or the roof or the land it sat on, but because it was filled with love and laughter and the kind of wealth that could never be measured in dollars. Nora Vance had lost her inheritance, but she had gained something infinitely more precious, a heart that knew how to love and be loved in return. And that, she knew, was a treasure that would last forever.